And so what we're trying to do is to create a more transsystemic awareness of indigenous knowledges. Ambidextrous epistemologies is what I called it in my early years. It was called Ethical Space by Willie Irvine, Cultural Interface by Martin Nakata. It's called Double Consciousness by Du Bois. And, there's many, many ways in which it is understood. But it also involves multiple ways of thinking and methodology. So there's not a singularity of theory that goes with it. It really is talking about having diverse knowledge systems while we also accept it as is and build new vocabularies to think about it, because one is in an indigenous language, the other is in a colonial Western language. One is very much connected and rooted to the land and territory. The other one is very connected to cognitive dissemination through literature and other kinds of written text. So we've got different kinds of knowledge systems, and we can only benefit by having all of them accessible to us. The kinds of conflicts in the world today between and among people of different language origins, of different place origins, that need to speak to each other requires trans-systemic ways of being, thinking, and moving forward.
One of his co-workers, Carol Gilligan, she wrote a book called In a Different Voice, which is one of the founding texts of feminist psychology. And what she pointed out was that there are different ways of knowing, there are different ways of thinking, and there's a very nice book edited by Belenki et al. Called Women's Ways of Knowing. And what they're pointing out is that there are different ways of knowing. Mm-hmm. We've been aware of this for decades. And school still prioritizes one way, the narrow, logical-deductive way, and that has its strengths. Yeah. But the important point I think we need to understand is the limitations of that kind of thinking. And it may be, this is Michael Gibbons' point, it may be that we've solved most of the problems that we can solve from those narrow disciplinary perspectives. Yeah. And what we may need in the future is more multidisciplinary work, people coming with different perspectives. Now, that I agree with. What I'm not sure about is how we do that.
Only information that was given any credibility or authority was information that had actually been derived by decontextualizing, and that information was inherently inadequate. It's useful, but it's inadequate. And there is a lot of other information, and that information, as living organisms, we are constantly engaging with it. It's not like it's not real. It's just that it doesn't sit on the page in the same way, because it's living, moving, changing, shifts from perspective to perspective, moves in time differently, creates paradoxes. It doesn't agree. It's right, but it's alive. It's real. It's there. How do you know in an algebra class that you're not supposed to jump on the desk and practice tango guitar? Where's the rule that says that? Well, there is no rule that says that. So how do you know? You see, there's a lot of information that we are paying attention to, that we're sensitized to. There's codes everywhere in our gesture, in our inflections of our voice, in what we say, what we don't say, in the small pacing of blinks of eyes, of the way your breath moves when you speak or when you don't speak.
I chose to label this whole commitment to the linear model as the systematic world we live in. The systematic is the step-by-step, the linear, the commitment to objectivity, the commitment to dualism. When we run a project over a 3-year time frame and say at the beginning of the project we will deliver these outcomes, then we are trapped to the linear model and to being systematic. Whereas if you're being systemic, you're recovering the key notion of relationship and relational dynamics, in which the linear one may be only a very, very minor component of it. It could be circular, recursive, involving feedback dynamics. It could produce emergence. So there are all sorts of things that operate in a systemic way of conceiving the world. And it makes historical connections with parts of Western thought, say the Heraclitus and process thought, Whitehead, So the systemic tradition is present in the Western intellectual tradition, but it's been sublimated for a long, long time, and particularly sublimated post the Second World War as the AI, computing, information, and the emergence of the computer as a piece of technology took off.